Now follow me to March 26, 2011. The McClatchy newspapers reported, and I quote, "The new leader of Libya's opposition military left for Libya 2 weeks ago," unquote. Apparently, around the same time, the President signed the covert operations order, and I'm making that observation. The new leader spent the past 2 decades of his life in Libya? No. In suburban Virginia, where he had no visible means of support. His name, Colonel Khalifa Hiftar. Now, one wonders when he planned his trip and who is his travel agency. Congress needs to determine whether the United States, through previous covert support of the armed insurrection driven by the American-created National Front, potentially helped create the humanitarian crisis that was used to justify military intervention. We need to ask the question. If we really want to understand how our constitutional prerogative for determining war and peace has been preempted by this administration, it is important that Congress fully considered relevant events which may relate directly to the attack on Libya. Consider this, Mr. Speaker. On November 2nd, 2011, France and Great Britain signed a mutual defense treaty, which included joint participation in Southern Mistral, a series of war games outlined in the bilateral agreement and surprisingly documented on a joint military website established by France and Great Britain. Southern Mistral involved a long-range conventional air attack called Southern Storm against a dictatorship in a fictitious southern country called Southland in response to a pretend attack. The joint military airstrike was authorized by a pretend United Nations Security Council resolution. The composite air operations were planned, and this is the war games, for the period of March 21st through 25th, 2011. On March 20th, 2011, the United States joined France and Great Britain in an air attack against Libya, pursuant to UN Security Council Resolution 1973. So the questions arise, Mr. Speaker, have the scheduled war games simply been postponed, or are they actually underway after months and months of planning under the name of Operation Odyssey Dawn? Were opposition forces in Libya informed by the U.S., the UK, or France about the existence of these war games, which may have encouraged them to actions leading to greater repression and a humanitarian crisis? In short, was this war against Gaddafi's Libya planned, or was it a spontaneous response to the great suffering which Gaddafi was putting upon his opposition? Congress hasn't even considered this possibility. NATO, which has now taken over enforcement of the no-fly zone, has morphed from an organization which pledged mutual support to defend North Atlantic states from aggression. They've moved from that to military operations reaching from Libya to the Chinese border in Afghanistan. North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We need to know, and we need to ask, what role French Air Force General Abriel and current Supreme Allied Commander of NATO for Transformation may have played in the development of Operation Southern Storm and in discussions with the U.S. in the expansion of the UN mandate into a NATO operation? What has been the role of the U.S. African Command and Central Command in discussions leading up to this conflict? What did the administration know, and when did they know it? The United Nations Security Council process is at risk when its members are not fully informed of all the facts when they authorize a military operation. It is at risk from NATO, which is usurping its mandate, the UN mandate, without the specific authorization of UN Security Council Resolution 1973. Now, the United States pays 25% of the military expense of NATO, and NATO may be participating in the expansion in exceeding the UN mandate. The United Nations relies not only on moral authority, but on the moral cooperation of its member nations. If America exceeds its legal authority and determines to redefine international law, we journey away from an international moral order and into the amorality of power politics, where the rule of force trumps the rule of law. What are the fundamental principles at stake in America today? First and foremost is our system of checks and balances built into the Constitution to ensure that important decisions of state are developed through mutual respect and shared responsibility in order to ensure that collective knowledge, indeed the collective wisdom of the people, is brought to bear. Two former Secretaries of State, James Baker and Warren Christopher, have spoken jointly to the, quote, importance of meaningful consultation between the President and Congress before the nation is committed to war, unquote. Our nation has an inherent right to defend itself and a solemn obligation to defend the Constitution. From the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam to the allegations of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, we've learned from bitter experience that the determination to go to war must be based on verifiable facts carefully considered.